When humans first stepped into the galaxy, they were not the most powerful, not the most advanced, and certainly not the most feared, yet they carried with them something that no one in the stars could ever predict: a curiosity that refused to die. At the great galactic trade station, where hundreds of alien races met to exchange goods, stories, and warnings, there was one tale that echoed louder than the rest, whispered in hushed tones, as though even speaking about it could invite danger. It was the story of a predator that lived on a forbidden world, a creature so terrifying that even the most advanced civilizations avoided its territory. Ships that wandered too close never returned, and those few who survived spoke only of glowing eyes in the darkness, teeth sharper than steel, and a roar that shook the very ground beneath their feet. For centuries, the galaxy had treated this predator as a nightmare best left alone, and so its planet remained untouched, marked as a dead zone on every star map. When humans arrived and heard the warning, the aliens expected them to obey as everyone else had. Yet humans were different. Where others felt fear, they felt challenge. Where others walked away, they leaned closer. Some called it foolishness. Others called it bravery. But to the humans, it was simply their nature. They wanted to understand, to know why this predator had been left alone for so long, to discover if it was truly the monster everyone believed. So, a small human crew prepared their landing craft and set course for the forbidden world, their decision causing shockwaves across the station. Many aliens shook their heads, convinced they would never return, while a few watched with a strange curiosity of their own, wondering if humans might somehow do what none before them could. The descent into the predator's world was tense. The air thick with silence, broken only by the hum of the engines and the quiet breathing of those inside the ship. Below, the planet stretched out in shades of deep green and shadow, forests so dense they seemed endless, rivers winding like silver veins, and mountains rising like teeth from the earth. It looked beautiful, almost peaceful, yet every story said danger hid behind that beauty. As the ship touched down on the edge of a vast jungle, the humans stepped out carefully, their boots sinking into the soft soil, their eyes scanning every rustle of the leaves, every distant cry carried on. The wind. For hours they walked through the wilderness, studying the plants, collecting samples, and watching the signs of life around them. Strange birds with shimmering wings darted between branches. Small creatures with bright eyes skittered through the undergrowth. But none of these were the predator they had come to find. The silence grew heavier as the sun began to dip lower, and then, without warning, the jungle itself seemed to still. The birds stopped singing, the insects stopped buzzing, and the wind no longer moved through the trees. A chill ran down the spines of the humans, for they knew that silence meant only one thing: the predator was near. From the shadows between the trees, it appeared. At first, it was only a shape, a blur of muscle and movement, its body larger than any beast the humans had ever seen, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, filled with an intelligence that felt almost unnatural. The ground seemed to tremble with each step it took, and when it stopped, standing only a short distance away, the humans could feel the weight of its gaze pressing down on them. Every story they had heard about this creature had painted it as a mindless killer. Yet what they saw in its eyes was not madness, but a sharp, calculating awareness. The predator was studying them just as carefully as they were studying it. One wrong move, one sudden action, and it would all be over. The humans knew they could not run. It would catch them in an instant. They could not fight. It was stronger, faster, and built for survival in a way no weapon could match. The only thing they could do was stand their ground and hope. For a long moment, predator and humans simply stared at one another, the air so thick with tension it was hard to breathe. Then, one of the humans did something no alien would have ever dared. Instead of raising a weapon or stepping back in fear, They slowly reached into their pack, pulled out a sealed container of food, and set it gently on the ground. The predator tilted its head, a low growl rumbling from deep within its chest, its eyes flickering between the strange offering and the humans who stood unmoving. Seconds stretched like hours as the predator crept forward, every muscle tensed as though ready to strike until at last its massive claws closed around the container. It sniffed, growled again, then with a sudden snap of its jaws, broke open the seal. The humans did not move, did not run, did not cry out, even as the creature's teeth could have shredded them in an instant. Instead, they watched with steady eyes, their bodies calm though their hearts pounded like drums. The predator ate, slowly at first, as if suspicious of the gift, and then with greater confidence as it realized the food was safe. When it was finished, it lifted its head once more, eyes glowing brighter now, but not with hunger. There was something else in them, something like curiosity. The humans could feel the shift in the air, subtle but powerful, as though the balance between predator and prey had changed. The creature did not attack, did not roar, did not chase them from its territory. It simply watched them, silent and unblinking, before turning and melting back into the shadows of the jungle. The humans exhaled the breath they had been holding, their bodies trembling with the weight of what had just happened. Against every warning, against every story, they had stood face to face with the most feared predator in the galaxy, and survived. More than that, they had made contact, however small, that was not built on fear or violence, but on an offering of trust. It was only the beginning, but even in that moment, they knew something extraordinary had happened. The galaxy had always seen this predator as a nightmare, but the humans had seen something different. Where others saw only a monster, they saw a being that could be understood. As they returned to their ship under the growing darkness, whispers of what they had achieved were already spreading beyond the jungle, carried by unseen eyes and ears, waiting to return to the wider galaxy. No one knew it yet, but history had just been rewritten on that quiet, forbidden world, and nothing would ever be the same again. The encounter with the predator should have ended in fear. By every measure of reason, the humans should have fled the moment it disappeared into the trees, packing their tools and samples and rushing back to orbit before the darkness of the jungle swallowed them. Fear was the natural response to something that could tear them apart in seconds, and in truth, their hearts had raced faster than any clock as they walked back toward their landing craft that night. Yet when the silence of the ship wrapped around them and the door sealed shut, they did not speak of escape. They spoke of what they had seen in those glowing eyes. Fear had been there, yes, sharp and heavy, but it was not the only thing. There had also been awareness, and awareness meant possibility. The galaxy had taught them that this predator was only destruction, but humans were not convinced. Something inside them whispered that the story was not finished, that the predator's world held more than terror. And so, instead of preparing to leave, they prepared to return. The next day they set out again, their steps lighter now though the memory of the creature still clung to them. Every sound in the jungle made them alert. Every broken branch or sudden silence sent their nerves humming. But it was not the same paralyzing fear they had first carried. This time it was edged with curiosity, a strange desire to see the predator again, to understand what had happened in that silent exchange of eyes and food. They were cautious, but not running, cautious but moving forward. The jungle itself seemed alive, whispering secrets through the wind, guiding them deeper where the shadows were thicker and the ground softer with fallen leaves. The humans paused often, noting signs they had overlooked before, scratches on tree trunks, trails pressed into the earth, the faint scent of something wild carried in the air. It was clear they were not the only ones watching. The predator had been here long before them, and it was likely watching them still. Hours passed, and as the sun leaned toward the horizon once more, The same stillness fell over the jungle. The birds went quiet, the insects hushed, and the air grew heavy as though the forest itself was holding its breath. The humans knew what it meant. This time, instead of freezing in fear, they slowed their steps, setting down their packs carefully and waiting. Their hearts beat fast, but their hands did not shake as they reached once more into their supplies, pulling out another container of food. They set it down in the clearing and stepped back, not retreating but showing respect, as though saying, "This space is yours, we are only guests." From the shadows, the predator emerged again. Its steps were silent, yet powerful, its body moving with a grace that seemed too fluid for something so large. The humans could see it better now, its coat a dark shimmer against the fading light, muscles rolling beneath the skin with every breath. Its eyes locked on them immediately, sharp and unblinking, and for a long moment the world was narrowed down to that gaze alone. Then its head tilted slightly, and it looked down at the offering. Another growl rolled from deep in its chest, not loud enough to be a roar, but enough to vibrate the ground beneath their feet. It crept closer, slow and deliberate, as though testing the patience of the humans, waiting to see if they would flinch, if they would raise their weapons, if fear would rule them. But the humans held steady. They did not move, did not threaten, did not beg. They only waited, eyes calm, shoulders straight, hearts pounding, but faces steady. At last, the predator reached the container, sniffed it, then cracked it open with its jaws. The humans watched quietly as it ate, their eyes studying every movement. It ate quickly, but not with the wild frenzy one would expect from a monster. No, this was measured, controlled, almost thoughtful, as though the creature was, testing not only the food but the meaning behind it. When it was finished, it raised its head again, eyes glowing faintly in the twilight, and for the first time it did not vanish immediately into the trees. It lingered. It studied them in silence, its tail low but not tense, its breathing calm but steady. The humans felt something shift in that stillness, an invisible thread pulling tight between predator and human, weaving something fragile yet undeniable. Curiosity had replaced fear on both sides. The predator took a step closer. Just one. The humans held their ground, though their bodies screamed to move. Another step followed, slow and deliberate, until the distance between them had halved. The humans could see the detail of its eyes now, not just glowing light, but layers of color within them. A strange depth that spoke of thought rather than simple hunger. The air was charged, tense, but no longer deadly. Then, as suddenly as it had approached, the predator turned and slipped back into the forest, leaving only silence behind. That night inside the ship, the humans spoke in quiet voices, their words carrying a mix of awe and disbelief. They had not been attacked. They had not been dismissed. They had been acknowledged. It was a small thing, almost nothing at all, and yet it was more than any being in the galaxy had ever achieved with this predator. Fear had brought them here, but curiosity was guiding them forward. They wondered aloud what would happen if they returned again, if they continued to offer not violence but respect, not dominance but trust. Some felt it was dangerous, perhaps reckless, yet none of them could deny the pull in their hearts. Something extraordinary was unfolding, and to walk away now would be to leave behind a story greater than fear. The next day and the one after, the humans returned to the same place, always cautious, always respectful. Each time they brought food, leaving it as an offering. Each time they stood their ground without threat or retreat. And each time the predator appeared, as though drawn by its own curiosity. It no longer growled as deeply, no longer circled them as though deciding whether they were prey. Instead, it came directly, eyes fixed but calmer, movements steady rather than threatening. It would eat, then linger, watching them, sometimes tilting its head as though trying to puzzle out their purpose. The humans began to notice small changes. 2. The way its ears flicked, not in warning, but in interest. The way its breathing slowed near them instead of quickening. Fear was not gone. It never truly vanished in the presence of something so powerful, but it no longer ruled their actions. Fear had turned into something else, into curiosity that pulled them back day after day, into a strange respect that was slowly becoming mutual. And deep within the jungle, where countless civilizations had only seen death, something entirely new was being written. Not in words, not in treaties, but in the quiet understanding between predator and human. The galaxy would not believe it yet, but the humans had seen it with their own eyes. The monster was not only a monster, the predator was more than fear, and the humans, once strangers in the galaxy, had taken the first step toward proving it. The days that followed were unlike anything the humans had ever imagined when they first landed on this strange world. At first, they had only wanted to study, to observe, to learn what this planet offered. The predator had been a terrifying obstacle, a shadow that could have ended their mission before it even began. But now, the predator was no longer only danger. It had become something else, something that pulled at their thoughts, even when they were safe inside their ship. Every morning they prepared food, not for themselves, but for the creature that had once filled them with fear. They spoke softly, to one another as they worked, not because they feared being overheard, but because the atmosphere had changed. There was a sense of something fragile in the air, something that needed patience and care to grow. Each time they stepped into the jungle, their footsteps felt less heavy, less burdened by dread. Instead, there was anticipation. The predator seemed to expect them now. No longer did it emerge only when the jungle had grown silent. Some days it was already waiting in the clearing when they arrived, its dark shape half hidden in the trees, watching them approach. Other days it came within moments, striding out with the confidence of something that knew it was no longer unwelcome. The humans always set down the food first, always showing the same respect. But now, instead of waiting at a distance, they stayed closer, and the predator accepted this. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and red, something changed. After eating, the predator did not turn back into the jungle. Instead, it lowered itself to the ground, its massive body settling onto the earth with a slow, deliberate movement. The humans froze, unsure if this was a trap or a gift. The creature's glowing eyes swept over them, not threatening but assessing, as if it too was making a choice. Then, it rested its head on its forelimbs and simply stayed. The humans could hardly believe what they were seeing. A being feared across the galaxy, a hunter spoken of only in whispers, was lying peacefully in their presence. The moment stretched into minutes, and the silence was not heavy but strangely calm. One of them shifted slightly, adjusting their stance, and the predator's ears twitched, but it did not rise. Instead, it blinked slowly, a gesture so small, yet so powerful. It was not submission, but it was trust, or at least the first shadow of it. That night on the ship, the humans replayed the scene in their minds again and again. They spoke of how the predator's body language had changed, how its growls were no longer warnings but something softer, almost conversational. They argued over what it meant, whether it was beginning to see them not as prey but as something different. And beneath all their words, there was a quiet thrill, a recognition that something extraordinary was happening right before their eyes. The next day, the bond deepened. When the humans entered the clearing, the predator approached them more directly than ever before. It stopped only a few steps away, so close that they could see the faint patterns on its dark coat, the way its muscles rippled beneath the skin. Its eyes flicked down to the food, then back to them, as though testing their reaction. The humans did not move. They only watched, calm and steady. Slowly, the predator bent down, ate, and then, lifting its head, it stepped closer again. The air seemed to freeze. The humans' hearts raced, but they did not retreat. They could feel its breath now, warm against the cooling air. And though every instinct screamed of danger, they remained still. The predator did something then that none of them expected. It circled them, not as a hunter ready to strike, but as if examining them in detail. It moved with grace, brushing close enough that one of its shoulders nearly touched a human's arm. The humans did not flinch. They stood steady, trusting that if they showed no fear, the creature would sense it. When the circle was complete, the predator stopped in front of them again and gave a low rumble, softer than any sound they had heard before. It was not a warning. It was something else, something that felt almost like acknowledgement. From that day on, the bond grew stronger. The predator began to follow them, not only in the clearing but along the edges of the jungle. It did not interfere with their work, but it remained close, watching, curious. Sometimes it moved ahead of them, clearing the way as though guiding their path. Other times it lingered behind, its presence both protective and mysterious. The humans felt a strange comfort in its company, as though the jungle itself had accepted them now because its greatest hunter had done so. One afternoon, while the humans were collecting samples near a stream, the predator appeared without sound and settled a few paces away. For hours it remained there, watching the water ripple, occasionally lifting its head when other creatures came too close. Once, when a smaller beast approached the humans with bared teeth, the predator rose silently, stepped forward, and released a single growl. The smaller creature fled instantly, leaving the humans untouched. The meaning was clear. The predator was not just tolerating their presence anymore, it was protecting them. That night, the humans could hardly sleep. Their voices were filled with wonder as they tried to put into words what had happened. A bond had been formed. One, so rare and fragile that even speaking of it felt dangerous, as though it might break if described too plainly. But they all felt it. The predator was no longer only curiosity. It was beginning to see them as something worth standing beside. And in return, the humans felt something grow within themselves, a respect deeper than they had ever known, a connection that went beyond fear or fascination. The following days only confirmed it. The predator grew more comfortable around them, lowering itself near their camp, sometimes staying through the night. The humans learned to read its movements, the flick of its ears, the tilt of its head, the rhythm of its breathing. They began to sense when it was calm, when it was alert, and when it was listening, and the predator, in turn, seemed to study them just as carefully, learning their patterns, their habits, their voices. There came a moment, quiet and unplanned, that sealed the bond in a way none of them expected. A human, reaching for their pack, stumbled on the uneven ground. Instinctively, they stretched out a hand to steady themselves, and that hand brushed against the predator's side. For a breathless instant, time stopped. The humans froze, expecting claws or teeth. But the predator did not move away. It did not attack. It simply stood there, solid and unmoving, allowing the touch. And in that single contact, brief as it was, the bond became real. From then on, the fear that had once ruled their encounters was gone. Respect remained, caution too, but the barrier had broken. The humans no longer doubted that the predator had accepted them in some small but undeniable way. It was not friendship as most would describe it, not yet. But it was a bond, a connection forged not through dominance or fear, but through patience, trust, and understanding. The galaxy would never have believed it if told. To others, this predator was still only terror, only destruction. But the humans knew better now. They had seen its eyes soften, heard its growls shift, felt its body steady beneath a human's hand. They had crossed a line no one else had dared approach, and on the other side was not death, but connection. And so, the story of predator and human continued. No longer a tale of fear alone, but of the first fragile bond between two beings who had been enemies only days before. It was the beginning of something larger than they could yet imagine, something that would echo far beyond the jungle, far beyond this world, into the heart of the galaxy itself. The bond between the humans and the predator had changed everything. At first, it had been only about survival, about not being eaten, about avoiding the jaws of the galaxy's most feared hunter. But now, as the days passed, the relationship had grown into something far greater. The humans had not just gained safety, they had gained something much more valuable, a new kind of power. It wasn't power in the way most thought of it. The humans did not suddenly become stronger, nor did they control the predator as a master commands a beast. Instead, their power came from something rare in the galaxy, the ability to create trust where there had once been only fear. That trust gave them an advantage no technology or weapon could provide. The first sign of this new power came one morning, deep in the jungle. The humans had gone farther than ever before, their samples and scans pulling them into territory no explorer dared enter. Normally, no one would risk moving so close to the heart of the predator's domain, but now they walked without fear, because they were not alone. The predator moved with them, silent but present, its steps blending with theirs as though they had always belonged together. Other creatures noticed. Beasts that would normally stalk the humans from the shadows now scattered when they saw who walked beside them. Even the air itself felt different, as if the jungle had shifted its opinion. The predator's presence was like a shield. No one, not even the boldest creature, dared to cross the humans now. For the first time, they were free to explore without looking over their shoulders. For the first time, they felt untouchable. One of the humans bent down to collect a plant that glowed faintly in the dim light. Normally, such a task required quick, nervous movements, always checking for danger. But now, the human lingered, studying, its roots tracing the strange patterns on its leaves. The predator stood nearby, scanning the trees, its eyes glowing faintly. It made a low rumble at the sound of distant movement, and instantly the jungle grew still again. The human smiled softly, realizing something almost unbelievable. This deadly predator had become their guardian. Word spread quickly among the crew. Each night, as they returned to their ship, the stories grew. They spoke of the way smaller predators avoided them, the way even the most dangerous creatures retreated when the hunter was near. What had once been the galaxy's nightmare had become their protection. And with that protection came the freedom to go where no one else dared, to study things others would never see, to walk paths that had been forbidden to explorers for generations. But the true strength of this bond revealed itself during an event none of them could have predicted. One afternoon, while exploring a ravine filled with strange glowing crystals, the humans found themselves cornered. A pack of wild beasts, smaller than the predator but vicious and fast, emerged from the shadows. Their eyes burned with hunger, their movements quick and precise. The humans froze, their hearts pounding. Even with their weapons, they were badly outnumbered. Before they could react, a roar shattered the air. The predator leapt from the rocks above, landing between the humans and the beasts. Its presence alone sent a wave of panic through the attackers, but they were desperate, and desperation made them bold. They lunged, snapping and clawing. The predator met them head-on. The fight was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. The predator moved with terrifying speed, its strength overwhelming. Every movement was precise, every strike devastating. The ground shook as the creatures clashed, growls and roars echoing through the ravine. The humans could only watch, stunned, as the predator fought not for its own survival, but for theirs. And then, something unexpected happened. Instead of standing frozen, one of the humans raised their weapon and fired at a beast lunging from the side. Another shouted a warning, drawing the predator's attention to danger behind it. Slowly, without planning it, predator and humans fought together. They were no longer separate forces, no longer protector and protected. They were allies. Every move flowed into the next, predator and human covering one another, anticipating danger, striking as one. When the battle ended, the ravine was silent except for the heavy breathing of the predator and the pounding hearts of the humans. The beasts lay scattered, defeated. The predator turned its glowing eyes toward the humans, its body tense, as though waiting to see how they would react. Slowly, one of them stepped forward, lowering their weapon, and gave a nod of respect. The predator rumbled softly in return, a sound that carried no threat, only acknowledgement. In that moment, something deeper than survival had formed. That night, the humans sat in their camp, their voices filled with awe. They spoke of how they had moved together, how it had felt as if the predator could sense their intentions, how they had felt stronger, sharper, more alive with it at their side. It wasn't just protection anymore. It was partnership. And with partnership came strength no one else in the galaxy had imagined possible. This new kind of power was not about control, but about balance. The humans brought their cleverness, their tools, their ability to adapt. The predator brought its strength, its instincts, its dominance over the wild. Alone, each was vulnerable. Together, they were unstoppable. The galaxy had always underestimated humans. They were seen as small, fragile creatures, weak compared to towering warriors or heavily armed species. But what the galaxy had never understood was the human gift of connection. Where others saw only enemies, humans saw potential allies. Where others saw only monsters, humans saw something worth understanding. That gift had given them the courage to reach across the barrier of fear, and now it had given them a partner unlike any other. Over the next days, the humans began to notice more changes. The predator no longer merely followed them, it adjusted its pace to match theirs. When they slowed, it slowed. When they stopped, it waited. At night, it chose its resting place carefully, always positioned so that it could guard both the jungle and the camp. When danger approached, it no longer reacted with instinct alone. It glanced at the humans first, as if considering their response, waiting to see if they wished to fight or remain still. For the humans, this was more than survival. It was transformation. They felt braver, more capable, as though the predators' strength had become their own. When they stood in the jungle, they no longer felt small. They felt part of something larger, something powerful. The fear that had once ruled their days was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence that no enemy could easily shake. And the predator, too, had changed. Where once it had been a solitary force, feared and avoided by all, it now moved with companions. It no longer hunted alone. Its eyes, once filled only with hunger, now carried something else, recognition, perhaps even respect. The humans had not tamed it, had not broken its spirit. Instead, they had earned a place beside it, and that was a bond far stronger than domination. The galaxy would never understand, not yet. They would still whisper of the predator in fear, still warn travelers never to set foot in its territory. But if they could have seen what the humans had seen, they would have known the truth. Power was not always about who had the sharpest claws or the strongest weapons. Sometimes, true power was the courage to trust, the patience to wait, the willingness to see beyond fear. And so, the humans and the predator walked together, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. They had discovered something no one else had dared to believe possible. In the heart of danger, they had found not only survival but strength. Not the strength of one side ruling over the other, but the strength of two forces joining together. It was a new kind of power, one that could change everything. And though they did not yet know what the future would bring, the humans understood one thing with certainty. With the predator by their side, they were no longer overlooked. They were no longer weak. They had become something the galaxy itself would one day have to reckon with.
The galaxy had always been ruled by fear. For countless generations, stories about the predator had shaped the way travelers moved, the way explorers planned their routes, and the way entire species built their colonies. The predator's shadow reached farther than its claws, and its reputation was stronger than any fleet. Wherever its name was spoken, voices lowered, and eyes grew uneasy. That was how it had always been. Until now, the humans had changed the story. What began as a desperate struggle to survive in the jungle had become something no one in the galaxy could have imagined. They had not only escaped the predator, they had walked beside it, fought with it, and built a bond that shook the foundations of old fears. The moment the predator accepted the humans as companions, the universe itself seemed to tilt in a new direction. At first, the change was quiet. The humans returned to their ship with new samples, new discoveries, and memories that could not be explained to outsiders in simple words. When they looked back at the world below, they did not see the same terrifying place they had once dreaded. They saw a world that had welcomed them because they had dared to welcome what everyone else rejected. The predators stood at the edge of the jungle as they departed, watching their ship lift into the sky. It did not chase, it did not roar, it simply watched, as if it knew this was not the end. Back on their stations, the humans spoke carefully at first. When they described their journeys, the others listened with disbelief. No one wanted to accept the idea that the predator could be anything but death in flesh. Some laughed, others scoffed, and many shook their heads, convinced the humans were exaggerating or losing their minds. Yet the humans did not argue. They simply told their story again and again, always the same, always steady, until the first seeds of doubt began to spread. The first true shift came when the humans returned to the predator's world. Many had warned them never to set foot there again, but they did not listen. They came back, not with weapons raised in fear, but with open minds. And once again, the predator appeared, not as an enemy, but as an ally. This time, they recorded everything. Every movement, every sound, every moment of silent understanding between predator and human was captured and sent across the stars. The proof could no longer be denied. The galaxy struggled to understand what it was seeing. Entire species who had built legends around the predator's cruelty now faced evidence that shattered those old tales. The predator had not been tamed, nor enslaved. It had chosen. And what it had chosen was perhaps the most unexpected thing of all. Trust in the weakest-looking species of all. At first, the galaxy reacted with confusion. Some argued the predator must have been sick or broken. Others claimed the humans were using hidden technology to control it. A few suggested it was nothing more than a trick, a staged show to gain attention. But the humans continued to share more, and slowly, something began to shift. That it was not just the predator's behavior that captured attention, but the way the humans had achieved it. They had not used domination or force. They had not built cages or chains. Instead, they had approached with patience, with courage, with curiosity that outweighed their fear. Where others saw a monster, the humans had seen a possibility. And that possibility had grown into reality. For the first time in history, the predator was not a symbol of terror. It was a symbol of something greater, a reminder that even the most dangerous barriers could be crossed if one dared to try. And in that truth, the galaxy saw humans differently too. Until then, humans had been overlooked by the larger, stronger civilizations. They were seen as fragile, as dreamers, as wanderers who survived more through luck than power. But now, those same voices who once dismissed them began to whisper with caution. If humans could win the trust of the predator, what else could they achieve? If humans could turn fear into friendship, what other secrets might they unlock? In time, the humans began to notice the shift. Where once they had been ignored, now they were studied. Where once they had been underestimated, now they were approached with care. Ambassadors asked them endless questions, trying to understand how they had done it. Some tried to copy their methods, venturing into dangerous worlds and attempting to make contact with beasts others had long avoided. Few succeeded, but the attempt itself proved how powerful the story had become. The predator itself remained on its world, but its presence reached farther than ever. Whenever someone spoke of it now, it was no longer only with dread. Its name carried a strange new weight, a mixture of fear and respect. And always, the humans were part of that story. Wherever they traveled, they carried the symbol of their bond. But perhaps the greatest change was not in how others saw the predator or the humans. It was in how the humans saw themselves. For so long, they had walked the galaxy as one of the smaller voices, always cautious, always trying to prove their worth. But after their time with the predator, they no longer doubted. They had faced the deadliest force known to countless civilizations, and they had not only survived but built a connection. That truth lived in their hearts like a quiet fire. It reminded them that their strength was not measured in muscle or claws, but in their unique ability to reach across divides others feared. Stories spread across colonies, ships, and stations. Children grew up hearing about the humans who befriended the predator, and they told those stories to one another with wide eyes. Explorers found courage in the tale, scientists found inspiration, and leaders found warnings. The galaxy itself began to shift its rhythm, because a simple truth had been revealed. The old rules were not unbreakable. Fear was not forever. Even the darkest shadow could hold the possibility of light. Years later, when people looked back, they said the moment the humans and the predator walked side by side was the moment the galaxy began to change. It was the spark that ignited countless new attempts at understanding, the seed that grew into alliances once thought impossible. Not every story ended the same way. Some creatures remained too dangerous, some too wild, but the attempt itself changed how civilizations saw one another. And the predator? Its story continued, whispered in new ways. No longer just the destroyer, no longer just the monster. It became a symbol of something else, a living reminder that trust, once formed, could break the strongest chains of fear. The humans never forgot their time in the jungle, nor the glowing eyes that had watched them with patience instead of hunger. They knew the galaxy would never be the same again, because they had proved something larger than themselves. They had shown that courage was not about fighting harder, but about daring to reach out when everyone else turned away. The galaxy had always feared the predator. But now, it feared something else even more. The possibility that humans, with their stubborn hearts and their endless curiosity, might change everything they touched. And in truth, that was exactly what they intended to do.